And we're back, and thanks again for joining us today on our special live stream coverage of the Sony a7S III launch. I'm Christopher Robinson from alphauniverse.com and host of the Alpha Universe podcast. And I've got from Sony Pro Support right now, Van Nguyen and Mike Bubolo. And Van and Mike, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great.
A couple of quick notes before we really begin. This is a live Q&A. If you're joining us from alphauniverse.com, feel free to send us a question through the website. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to send us a question. We're monitoring that as well. And we have had a bunch of questions today regarding S-Cinetone, asking about that in the camera, which it does not have. And so for everyone who's asked that, there's your answer. And now I would like to get back to you, Van, and you have the camera in hand. Can you start by showing us a little bit more about the menus? We had you on earlier and we started going through that, but I'd like to get into it a little bit more.
Let me switch to the view. Just by the way, these are my kids up here. This is Natalie, Ty, and you guys.
They didn't come with the frame. Yeah.
Alpha 9. Yep, that's my third child there. But here's the main menu, and if you hadn't seen it earlier in the presentation, it's really laid out very well. And I've had a very short time with this camera, and I kind of was concerned, like, I'm going to have to reprogram my brain because things are just laid out differently. But after a little bit of time with it, things are just intuitively in the places that you would expect to find them. And I think, again, that's thanks to all the people out there that have provided feedback about where they think things should go. It's very easy to use.
Van, can you animate that for us so people can see how the menu shifts as you're moving through? There you go.
Yeah, so on the left side, you've got the shooting tabs, which used to be across the top. And thankfully, we've kind of kept the colors the same. The first tab is shooting tab, of course, so you'll find a lot of the camera settings here. The second tab is the exposure and color tab. So you'll find a lot of the exposure adjustments, white balance, picture profiles, zebras, all that stuff here. And the next tab is the focus tab. So this used to be just kind of scattered, some on the first tab and second tab, and now we've got kind of a centralized place for it all. So all the focusing settings and stuff, transition speeds, although you can adjust quite a bit. Playback, of course, here. Network, so all the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth stuff. And then setup is where you kind of have the under the hood adjustments.
The menu changes when you go from video to stills too, correct? So now when you're in stills mode and you go into the menu, it's more still centric. And when you're in video and you go into the menu, it's more video centric. You can still manipulate some of the settings for each one in the respective menus, but it's more focused on your application when you're in one shooting situation than the other, and it just makes shooting a lot easier. It makes it a lot more efficient, and it just makes the experience a lot better. So, and are you using the dial right now, Van, or are you touching it?
I'm using the jog wheel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I'm obviously outputting this through an HDMI to a switch, so I'm not able to use the touch. But what I can do is, let me switch to this kind of other view here. I can remove the HDMI cable out. The menu comes to here, and I can actually, let's back up, turn the touchscreen on. And should be able to just tap. There you go.
Awesome.
And just, it's super smooth and super fast to get to where you want. And then what you'll see is on the screen, whenever there's any type of adjustments, you'll have little touch areas here. So if I want to decrease the autofocus attack speed or increase it, and of course hit OK, close the main menu.
Right. So. Which also means when you have that screen flipped out in a shooting scenario where you can't access the back of the camera, you'll be able to set one of the top buttons as a customized button for your menu, and then you can scroll through and go through your menu even while the camera is against the dashboard of a car or windshield of a car or in the corner or in a rig, shooting rig. So it really makes a lot more usability than what we've had before. It's just really nice. And again, this menu system has been just hundreds and hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of talking to customers, not just on the pro support side, on doing events, but every time we have condo, every time we talk to our artisans of imagery and our collective and talking to DPs and videographers, we just take all their feedback, and this camera is really the culmination of that. And you can see it in this menu because it's the menu that a lot of us have been looking for. I'm sure Van had the same thing, but when you first turn it on, we're so dialed in the old menu. We're like, oh no, a new menu. Like my heart stopped for a second. And then of course I start going through it, and then I'm like, wow, this is actually really intuitive. Like this is really nice. It's really fast. And within a couple of minutes, I was able to just fly through and get to everything I needed to. And by the time I was done with my camera, which was 12 hours, I was flying through it. And I actually now love this menu system, and I just found it really intuitive and really easy to use.
And
yeah, so I turned on my picture-in-picture so you can kind of see what I'm doing to the back of the camera, the top of the camera.
Yeah.
Switch to stills mode. And then you'll see on the menu upper left there, the shooting tab switched from a little film strip icon to a photo. So now I know, okay, I'm in photo menu, and I can arrow to the right. Image quality tab or page is the same, but then the options have changed. So now I have all my still settings if I want to go in and change, the type of files and stuff that I'm going to record. So, but I can still activate movie settings, kind of down here at the bottom. So,
Van, can you show some of the customizable or customization that you can do through the menus?
Yeah, so there's lots of customizations. If I go to the top here, to the My Menu, I can go in and I can, fully customize like a custom shooting menu. You can add many different pages here, add different items. So if I add an item, I can it basically takes me to all the assignable functions here, which is most of the tabs, most of the functions. So say I want to add aspect ratio, and that's kind of My Menu 1 is kind of a lot of video stuff. So maybe I'll start a new one, add it to My Menu 3, arrow to the right, select. It's been added. Now if I back up using the menu button and out, there's My Menu 3 now, and there's the aspect ratio I just added. So fully customizable, and of course, you may have seen it here when I was just briefly here. Down at the bottom, it says Display from My Menu. I can actually have that, the menu button here on the back, pull up the My Menu pages first. So if I'm working a job and I need to get to certain settings really quickly, I don't have to dive through the whole depth of the menu.
And I'm sorry, Mike, did I cut you off when I was asking Van to do the menus there?
No, not at all.
Okay. Van, could you get out of the menu for a second and just sort of help us to walk around the camera a little bit more, around the outside, show people that in kind of a virtual hands-on experience? Yeah,
so this is very similar body-wise to the Alpha 9 Mark II and the Alpha 7R Mark IV. It feels identical in the hand. Of course, you'll notice here at the top, the movie record button has moved from next to the viewfinder up to where the C1 button previously was, and they just kind of swap places. But you can customize this button if you're working with mixed bodies and you want this to be your C1 button again. You can assign, about 30 functions to this button. So it doesn't always have to be that way, but it's just set up out of the box like this for you. So you've got the exposure compensation dial, the rear dial, front dial still there, of course the mode dial up here. One of the things that's changed is the door. So we've added a lock here. So now you're gonna pull down the little lock, and then it'll flip open. Here you've got dual SD card slots, which are also CF Express card slots as well. So CF Express Type 2. Can we
pause there and talk about the CF Express cards for a second, and just what is CF Express?
So CF Express is our new format. One of the reasons why I created this format, because we needed to be able to have, hey, look at that. We need to be able to have a format that was smaller than typical CF Express, but we obviously needed faster speed than SD cards, because we're able to do 1200 megabits per second to write to the sensor in this camera and record it 600 to 800 megabits per second. So we needed a card that was faster. So we created CF Express Type A. So those two slots are capable of each slot is capable of taking either the CF Express Type A or the SD card slot. And what's so important about that is because, I mean, the common thread for this camera is that there's no compromise in the camera, right? So when you, and we've learned our lesson in the past because we've done this, but when you have two cards that aren't the same speed, you have to shoot to the lowest common denominator. You can't just have the shooting capabilities of anything you want to do because you have to shoot redundantly as a professional and you have to then shoot towards that slower card. So being able to have two CF Express Type A cards gives us the ability to shoot however we want without compromise and have it shoot redundantly at the same time, because the last thing you want when you're out there shooting a wedding or you're out there in the Moab or you're in, you know, ice caves like Chris, the fact of the matter is you need to be able to have a backup of that data, and you can't do that and get the best possible image quality when you have two cards that are of different speeds. So it's really important that we did this, and I'm super impressed. And the cards, when like Van showed you the card, it's smaller than SD card. It's more reliable than SD card. It's tougher than SD card. It's just, to me, the perfect format of card. It's just a really, I'm excited.
And just talking about those slots again, just to clarify for a second, they're basically two identical twin slots. One isn't truncated for speed or capacity or buffering or anything else. They're both exactly the same card slot. They just exist in parallel in the camera.
Absolutely. Same speed, same everything, can both have the same exact functionality. So,
we got a question from YouTube asking about the form factor. Is it the same form factor as the a7S II? Will it fit into the same camera cage?
No. So it's the same form factor as the Alpha 7R Mark IV and the Alpha 9 Mark II. So a lot of the ergonomic improvements that we've made on those cameras we brought into this camera. And it's also can accept the same battery grip as the Alpha 7R Mark IV and the Alpha 9 Mark II. So, but even though it looks exactly the same, everything from the inside out is just completely new, completely done from the ground up. So it's just a completely new camera, but the same exact form factor as we're used to from the Alpha 7R Mark IV and Alpha 9 Mark II. So again, the same grip, same form and feel. You can see on the top of the camera, there's that big record button. Mm-hmm. So that is something that is a little bit different on the physically on the camera itself. But overall, between that record button, obviously the ports, because you can see that Van's using the full HDMI port, and then the LCD screen, it's overall the same footprint. So.
And Van, I interrupted you to talk about the CF Express cards. Please continue with that walk around.
Yeah, so the CF Express cards basically kind of have the same kind of look as the almost footprint as the SD card. So you can see it's not much, of a difference in terms of the width, but you can see the cutouts there.
Yep.
And we do have it labeled here. Slot 1 is still on top, slot 2 on the bottom. And then the ports on the side here, a lot of people were interested in seeing these. This is a MacBook charger, USB-C, so it's basically providing some power delivery there. And then I'm going to take off this cable.
And that power delivery, like Van just said, it can actually charge the camera faster than it discharges. So it's the first time that we've done that on an Alpha. So you can have unlimited record time while charging via USB-C, which is huge for that videographer that has a camera on a rig or you're doing time lapse. Obviously, you need the appropriate powerful charger to do it, but the fact that you're able to do it increases the ability to be creative out in the field when you're remote.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to find if you arrive on site and you're like, oh man, somebody didn't pack the HDMI cable. You can run out to a lot of different shops that'll sell just a standard HDMI. The doors are very good. I kind of pull. You have to kind of pull pretty hard. So the weather sealing is very good on this body. The channels that are here on the door and of course on the inside of the camera seem very deep. It's pretty solid. Again, based off of a lot of feedback that we've gotten from previous customers, they've definitely listened. People were asking if we can flip this around. Yeah, so we can do that.
Does that weather sealing adversely affect its ability to displace heat? Does it create a heating issue at all?
No. So one of the major things in this camera is that we wanted to create virtually endless video recording time. So there's obviously no 30-minute record limit, but we have record times that are over an hour or more. So the heatsink that's built into the camera was made without a fan. And one of the important reasons for not putting that fan is because once you incorporate a fan, you're no longer weather sealed, you're no longer dust and moisture resistant, and it also creates noise for your onboard mic. So we're able to basically create the impossible, in my mind, is that because everyone always thought the camera was going to be bigger to accommodate a fan or a heat sink or this or that. So we were able to keep the same footprint, keep it the same dust and moisture resistance as the Alpha 9 Mark II and Alpha 7 Mark IV, and be able to have those extremely long record times without it overheating, all while not creating any noise. It's a marvel, really. It's pretty impressive.
We got a question that came in from Alpha Universe about the AF system. Is it a new AF system? And actually, if you can just sort of walk through the AF system a little bit.
Absolutely. So one thing the S series has never really been known for is autofocus, right? So in 2015, when we had the Alpha 7S Mark II, it was still contrast-based autofocus. And in those 5 years, we've created a ton of full-frame cameras that have unbelievable autofocus. And it really kind of made the Alpha 7S Mark II realize that it needs to have a better autofocusing system. So we created the best autofocusing system, arguably, in the Alpha line in this camera. So we have 795 phase detection autofocusing points on the sensor itself, 30% better eye autofocus, or I like to call it pupil autofocus, because this enables us to do things that you're not used to doing on a professional video camera. Most videographers, when they hear autofocus, they just shut off and they think that you just can't use it because it's not as reliable as they need it to be. So not only are you able to do eye autofocus in photos, but of course you can do it in video. So I can be moving, my subject can be moving, I can be shooting at 1.8 and I can track the pupil of the eye wherever it goes. I can do full subject tracking by either touching the screen or moving my focusing point. The possibilities are really endless. And it's important to also remember, again, no compromises. You get full autofocus, the same autofocus in all modes, 4K 120p, full HD 240, and all bit rates in all shooting modes. So that's really important to remember, that there's no compromise in the autofocusing system. And it also focuses in near darkness. So the camera can see in near darkness, but it can also autofocus in near darkness. At -6 EV, it's able to shoot at f2 with -6 EV in complete darkness. It just gives you the ability to do things that you're just not used to being able to do. So, and when we say near darkness, I mean when I go outside and I can't see my hand in front of my face because it's so dark out, I'm able to record, I'm able to get beautiful imagery, and I'm also able to autofocus on someone's pupil at the same time. It's just really incredible. And beyond that, for the first time in Alpha, we've made lots of focusing parameters designed just for videographers. So now the transition speed, when you're going from one subject to the next, can be controlled in 7 different steps. So you can really get that nice simulated rack focus. And then also the subject recognition speed, where you can change from one subject to the next, you can change in 5 different speeds. So that way, if I'm following my subject and then another subject comes into play, I can have it just stay steadfast on that first subject instead of switching over. Or I can make it so it automatically switches over to that subject that's in the foreground, to be able to give you just a lot of creative freedom and really have that true cinematic look while maintaining autofocus. So it's really a tool that people can really rely on in terms of autofocus, and it becomes more like instead of having to manipulate that hardware to do what you needed to do, it becomes an extension of your creative vision. So you don't have to really think about the product. The hardware can do the work for you, and you just concentrate on what you need to do.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
We've been talking with a lot of the guests today about that kind of usability, that kind of performance. You know, it's one thing to have a whole lot of specs crammed into a body. It's another thing to have something that becomes really usable and really really capable. And you were just talking about the autofocus system. It's like one thing to have a new autofocus system and to have a low light monster of a camera. When the two work together, you've got something that becomes a very usable, tool for a lot of different creativity. Talk a little bit about the multi-interface shoe, if you would, please.
Sure, yeah. I mean, what's video without great audio? So one thing that we've been striving for since we've come out with Alpha is that we've been rethinking the way that cameras perform, right? So we incorporated the multi-interface shoe quite a long time ago, and you can see there that there's pins inside of that multi-interface shoe, and those pins allow us to put adapters on there or microphones like the XLR, like external microphones that give us really good quality audio. And one thing that's different on this camera is that with our XLR K3M, through that multi-interface shoe, we're able to get a true XLR audio quality that gives us 4-channel 24-bit recording, which gives us unbelievable quality in terms of audio that matches the unbelievable quality of video that you can get in the camera. And it just changes the landscape, because most cameras in this space just have a mic jack that needs to be adapted to a Beach Tech for XLRs or whatever it is, where this camera, you're able to utilize that multi-interface shoe and get true uncompressed 24-bit linear PCM audio in 4 channels, which is pretty incredible. And it's not just analog anymore either. With the Alpha 7R Mark IV, we incorporated digital audio as well. Gives us better signal to noise ratio, better denoising, so that way the background noise is almost completely eliminated. You're able to change the way the audio sounds and be able to just get 24-bit now out of a digital signal, giving you the best audio performance of any camera out there. It's pretty crazy. And Van was just showing you the ability to do 4 channels at 24-bit is.
This is the monitor, and under the monitoring options here, you can monitor channels 1 and 2, or 3 and 4, or combine 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, or if you're doing mono, then or single channel, you can just have it monitor that as well. So there's a lot of capabilities. Yeah. So obviously, I also mounted the XLR, not an XLR adapter, but a stereo microphone here to the top to show the multi-interface shoe. The nice thing about any of these microphones that like Mike was talking about is you don't have to worry about this cutting out on you during an interview or during a critical time while you're filming, because it's actually pulling power from the camera. So as long as your camera's powered, your microphone, of course, will receive power as well.
We got a question over YouTube asking to explain why Sony chose 12 megapixels. Because it's a new sensor, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, so it's a 12 megapixel sensor, but it's brand new. Everything is created brand new. And it's designed, it's very purpose built for that videographer, for that professional videographer, because we wanted to do 3 things with this sensor. We wanted to create the best possible 4K image quality. So every single shooting mode that we have on the camera now is full pixel readout, no line skipping, no pixel binning, and no crop in every single shooting mode, which is really incredible and was really of the utmost importance for us to have. The second thing is that 12 megapixels allows us to get those extreme high ISO, to get that extreme high ISO performance where we can get noiseless 56,000, 100,000. We can get over 15 stops dynamic range, and this sensor allows us to do it. The third thing is, because it's 12 megapixels, we're able to have twice the scan rate and twice the sensor readout speed of any of the sensors that we've had in the Alpha lineup, and also 3 times better rolling shutter than the Alpha 7S Mark II, making it some of the best rolling shutter in the industry right now, with almost no rolling shutter whatsoever. And from a stills perspective, of course, you get to utilize that high ISO performance, that dynamic range, but you're also able to get over 1,000, more than 1,000 JPEG plus RAWs. Because that resolution is a little bit lower, we're able to process all that information and get almost an unlimited buffer and still be able to print a 13:19 image and be able to get that great imagery that we've had before. And a lot of people are going to think it's the same sensor, but it's really completely redesigned, where it's back illuminated now. And what that means is, believe it or not, the electronics usually lay on top of the sensor itself, in between the pixels. So what we did was, and we've been doing this for a long time, is that we actually just moved all those electronics underneath the light sensitive material. It's not only because of 12 megapixels, you have larger, bigger pixels to get more light, but the photosensitive part of those pixels are even bigger because we moved the electronics underneath the light sensitive material, creating, well, essentially dethroning what used to be the king of low light. Now this is the new king of low light. And it's not just that high ISO performance in terms of noise, it's also in terms of color reproduction, it's in terms of sharpness, and this new sensor is one of the main reasons why we're able to do all those things.
We were talking a little bit earlier about Cinetone, and while the camera doesn't have Cinetone, it should still have a really good match for a lot of professional camcorders. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, since 2015, we've introduced a lot of full-frame cameras, including full-frame video cameras like the Venice, like the FX9, and we've utilized not just the feedback from those DPs, from those cinematographers, but also the engineers, and we know that this camera is going to be really popular as a B camera for those cameras, and obviously as a main camera for other videographers, but we really wanted them to match as perfect as possible, and we wanted to take their learnings about their color science and bring that onto this camera. So one thing that really gets overlooked on this camera, I think, is the color science, is how good the colors are. And you're already starting to hear from the artisans and from the people who have used the camera how impressed they are with the colors and how easily it matches with the Venice, how easily it matches with the FX9 to be able to make that seamless video performance with both cameras at the same time.
We got a question over YouTube regarding the MI shoe. What about using external flash with multi-interface shoe? HVL, F60, RM, TTL, etc. Yeah.
Yep, it's compatible with all of our current flash lineup, of course. Anytime you mount, one of the nice things about the multi-interface shoe is anytime you mount one of our accessories, there's communication that happens. So, if you're mounting a wireless command trigger, it'll automatically kick on, the wireless flash mode, and then also disable the live image preview. So there's really not a whole lot that you have to do and remember to do when you're using Sony accessories. Of course, there's a lot of third-party accessories being developed out there. Some of them may operate the same way, some of them may not. So, we can't speak for that. But with the HVL F60, yeah, no problem. It's just going to, you got to remember that it's going to kick over to mechanical shutter at that point, just for any type of flash application. Even the Alpha 9 Mark II needs a mechanical shutter to do flash.
Is there any anti-aliasing or OLPF filter on this camera?
I have to find out. I'm not sure at this point.
Okay. We will check on that and find out more. Sorry, I'm scrolling through a couple of questions here.
No, that's fine.
I'll just keep driving through the menu here so people can kind of take some time to see what's on each tab, because I think that's one of the big things is normally what we would do at a product launch is we'd have a bunch of the cameras and people could walk up and play with them a little bit and get to know the new menu system, but they can't. So it's nice to just be able to go through and check these settings here. I did get some clarification from earlier. I think somebody had asked, 4K all intra at 120 frames per second. That is accessible through the S&Q mode. So if you want to do all intra 4K 120, of course you can go through S&Q mode. Right now, if I go up to image quality, I'm on 4K all intra right now, and then of course it maxes out here at 60 in the menu. But if I go into S&Q settings, I can shoot at 120 frames per second. So.
And we got a question from Alpha Universe, just again about the heat sink. I guess there's some confusion. Can you explain, Mike, exactly how the heat sink, the new heat sink, works?
I can't explain exactly how it works. It's pretty innovative. It's completely passive heat sink, so we really are just using the materials and the design of since the sensor makes most of the heat. The materials that are used to dissipate that heat away from the sensor, we've just done it completely passively and with the materials that are in that heatsink. But for a full explanation of exactly how those materials and how the specific design, that Sigma design of that carbonite material works, I think that's beyond even me. I need to get a better explanation from the engineers in Tokyo. I haven't had any time to be able to sit down with them, but I'm looking forward to it. But as of right now, that's what we got. We just know it works.
Sure.
So that's the most important part.
That is the most important part.